The Travel Bug Girls have partnered with A Little Nitty, a local yarn shop in Milton, Washington, to create some incredible trips that you are going to love. Each trip is designed to check all the boxes for yarn and fiber lovers who want to take their crafting on the road or the high seas. So grab your favorite yarn and get ready to pack your bags. We have Nitty Adventures coming in May, August, and October of 2025. To find out more, visit travelbuggirls.com/nitty-adventures. Welcome to the Travel Bug Girls podcast, the show where we dive into the world of travel, exploring everything from expert tips and insider secrets to unforgettable destinations and the latest trends. Whether you're a seasoned globetrotter or planning your very first adventure, we've got you covered with the advice and inspiration you need to make your travels truly unforgettable. So sit back, relax, and let's take your travel planning to the next level. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Travel Bug Girls podcast. I'm Kimmy here today with Christopher Hill. He's the CEO of Hands Up Holidays, and he's going to kind of tell us a little bit about this very unique but service volunteer related luxury travel experience, which I think is really cool. So why don't we just start there? We kind of give us a little bit of background about you and sort of what led you to this point.
Sure. Thanks, Kimmy. My background is that I studied law and business and ended up getting my first job in London, England, in working for one of the investment banks. And 6 years into doing that, so we're talking 2002, I took a trip to South Africa. And on that trip, in addition to going on safari and exploring the wonders of Cape Town and the garden route and the winelands and so on, I also helped to build a house for a family in one of the slum areas just outside of Cape Town. And this experience enriched the added sort of two dimensions to travel that I hadn't previously encountered in all the travel I'd done leading up to that. And they were, one, that it enabled me to actually engage with the local people and hear their stories and gain insights into their lives. And then secondly, it felt great to actually to help alongside this family and provide them with a decent place to live. And so these two things combined with a love of travel made me think, I've learned some good business skills. Why don't I put in something I find a bit more meaningful and fulfilling and make it easy for others to have experiences like I've just had? And so that was the genesis really for what became Hands Up Holidays.
Did you go back and immediately kind of start working on building that, or?
Yeah, good question. No, not exactly. I decided to take a year out and do some more study, which I did in Vancouver, Canada. And this idea was one of a few that I was tossing around in my head at the time. And throughout that year, this idea for what became Hands Up Holidays ended up taking root. But as I say, it took me a year to sort of formally decide that. And then I spent the next 2 years traveling the world and building relationships with different communities and travel partners before launching it in 2006.
Wow. I can imagine that would be a lot of like hands-on, one-on-one sort of research and connecting. And that's a lot of intensive work to build up to even the point of just getting started.
Yeah, it was. And I think it had to be really in order to be able to speak authentically about the experiences we're offering. I had to experience them firsthand, which, it was intense. It was a lot of work, but obviously it was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I can imagine. So can you give us kind of a basic outline of one of your Hands Up holiday trips would look like for a family?
Yeah. Well, every trip is customized. It's crafted by myself in conjunction with our clients. And so there's no two trips that are the same. But, to give you a flavor of them, it's essentially we do a deep dive with our clients to really understand what they want to get out of a trip and how they'd like to help, and then also what they'd like to do in their leisure time. But one popular example trip would be, say, to Costa Rica, where guests can combine helping at a wildlife rescue center, which is where guests can help with preparing the meals for monkeys and parrots and whatever other animals they may have in at the time, helping to maintain their enclosures, creating enrichments to stimulate the animals, and going around with the veterinarian on his daily rounds and really just learning a lot about the different animals. And so doing that, and then combining that with whatever the client wants to do. So in Costa Rica, it might be ziplining and snorkeling and whitewater rafting and bean to bar chocolate making, or a coffee, a visit to an organic fair trade coffee farm, for example. So that's essentially it, combined, overlaying that with sustainable luxury, eco-luxury accommodation throughout.
So here at the Travel Bug Girls, we're all four of us that are part of this agency are women, and most of our clients that we work with are women. Do you have any volunteer projects that specifically impact women, and which ones do you find are most popular with your female clients?
Yeah, overwhelmingly our clients are female as well. That in a family context tends to be the wife.
Mm-hmm.
But we have also done I guess you could call them sort of girlfriend getaways as well. And in terms of specifically benefiting females, one that springs to mind is in Kenya, where we have been working on creating a accommodation for young women that are fleeing other villages that practice female genital mutilation and forced early marriage. And so, that's one example of something that obviously specifically benefits females. And it's really honored to be working with a community there that is so forward thinking that they, really speaking out and acting out against female genital mutilation and forced early marriage, and are like a beacon in the region for young women to be able to go to and get freedom.
Yeah, that's incredible. What an incredible partnership.
Absolutely.
I love that you found a way to combine giving back and helping other people with also exploring the incredible world that we live in, and just getting to weave those things together to create even more of a rich experience when you travel is fantastic.
You've nailed it, Kimmy.
Yeah, that's something that we've talked about a lot, even on our podcast with each other, is how do we want to make our travel more than just going and seeing all the same sites that everybody else has seen, clicking that picture of that monument and then going to the next thing. You can do that. You can go all over the world and see these beautiful things, but not really have it impact you, and so we're always kind of looking for ways to make our travel more meaningful. And like you said, connecting with maybe a smaller business or a more personal restaurateur, or maybe a winemaker, or whatever it might be in some of these more famous regions. But you can really make it more personal when you're connecting one-on-one with an individual or a smaller entity. So we really appreciate that. So how do you balance the luxury aspect of the trip with the hands-on kind of giving back service projects?
Yeah, well, the luxury part is, I view it as the sort of the vehicle to enable people who want to make a difference but don't want to have to rough it to enable that to happen, really. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of providers of organizers of volunteering experiences where you do rough it. And that's perfectly fine and great. But there are people who don't want to do that, but still want to help. And so that's
Mhm.
where we come in, really.
I love that. What are some of like your most personally rewarding moments or like impactful stories that you witnessed either through your own travels with Hands Up Holidays or like working with some of the families, your clients that have
Hmm.
participated?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll speak firstly from my own experience, then maybe share a couple of stories about from clients. One that springs to mind was a trip we took as a family to Bali, Indonesia, and on that trip, in addition to doing mountain biking and whitewater rafting and hiking to incredible waterfalls and rice paddies and cooking classes and snorkeling and so on, we also helped to install a disabled accessible bathroom for a paraplegic in his home. And it's especially significant in Bali because it's a Hindu island. If you are born with a disability, then that can be considered as bad karma. And particularly for people like paraplegics, they can, as a result, be sort of hidden away and lead very isolated, lonely lives. And so to be able to create something, i.e. a disabled accessible bathroom for them, provides them with a measure of dignity and independence in this, in obviously a personal area of going to the bathroom. And so it was fantastic for me to be able to do that with my family, and our kids were able to get involved with drawing water from the well and then carrying that water over to where the cement was being mixed, and actually get involved with that, mixing the cement and then ladling it onto the wheelbarrows and then wheelbarrowing it over to where the experts were doing the tricky parts. It's probably worth mentioning that that's sort of our model really is what I describe as a philanthro volunteering model, in that it's the funds that our clients bring, which enables us to pay for the materials and also to hire local people to do actually most of the work, and certainly the tricky parts of the work, and to supervise our clients, where to enable them, even without skills, to feel like they're making a contribution. And then also, we also got involved with the painting of that house for the family as well. So that was great to see the kids get involved in that, and then getting engaged with the local children also, and playing with them was really special to see. And then some client stories. A couple that spring to mind would be we had a client, a woman who was recently retired, and she was traveling on her own, and I think certainly hadn't traveled to Africa before, but had read about us and decided that she wanted to help in Kenya. But she was really nervous about travel and so on. So it required a lot of hand holding to begin with. And, sort of in terms of leading up to the trip, and then whilst in the trip, she had the typical, high level of care. And she did her trip and loved it so much that she pretty much booked the next flight out to Kenya. And then she booked her own apartment, and she was getting a rental car and driving herself around, and to see just sort of flourishing and her newfound confidence of spreading her wings was really wonderful to see. And so she spent the next 3 months in the community there,
Wow.
volunteering after traveling with us. And then an even more sort of extreme version of that was a family client that traveled with us to India, and they, after their time with us, they decided to take the whole family and move there for a year to India to really go deep. So,
Wow.
and actually one other story that really touched me was it was a family trip again to Morocco, and there they were helping to build a library in a quite a fairly remote school, and so they got a lot of interaction with the children in the school, and so when they got back home, Christmas time came around, and they said, actually, we want to give our gifts to the children that we were playing with in the school. And so it's things like that that really touched me
Wow.
and
Yeah.
helped me to get out of bed in the morning with gusto.
That's so neat because it really seems like it just sparks like a whole new, it just opens up a whole new kind of way of looking at the world, and seeing the world. So that's really neat. How do you get connected with like the person that you were talking about that you guys went in and built a bathroom for them? Like, how do you get connected? Because these are such like one-on-one kind of personal needs. Do you have like a network or?
Yeah, we do now have a network really in essentially every country we work. But there's those networks are developed not through any one one pathway. For example, how that all came about in Bali was when I was setting things up in those first 2 years. I obviously, was putting out the feelers and was told about a woman who'd worked for Vodafone here in New Zealand, actually, and Vodafone at that time was essentially giving scholarships to their employees to go and volunteer in a community. And so she'd come back and someone I knew knew her, and she was happy to speak with me, and so she put me in touch with the volunteering organization that she had worked with, which was primarily actually making prosthetics for people with like amputees.
Mm-hmm.
But through her introduction, I was told that there is also this need for more substantial structures to be built, particularly around bathrooms for paraplegics. And so I went out there and checked it out and saw that they're doing great work and have had that relationship with them for nearly 20 years now.
Cool. So you kind of touched on this, but you mentioned like the projects that you're doing, are they fully funded by Hands Up Holidays? Like
They are, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our model. Yeah.
Okay. So y'all fund and provide the money for the materials, the workers, and all of that. So you're just coming in and kind of here, let us help you with this. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's on a sort of a building project, which can be a house or say that bathroom that I mentioned. It tends to be like most of that work gets done before the clients get there. And the art / science is around timing it so that there is just enough work still to be done so that in the time that our clients have, which is typically, a few days, they can complete it and get that sense of satisfaction of seeing the finished product and then handing it over to the recipient. And then there are some smaller ones that we do and love. For instance, in Belize, a really very popular one is installing these eco-friendly stoves, which we work with Mayan communities, and the traditional way of cooking in these huts is over an open flame, typically in the middle of the hut. And these stoves replace those open flames, and so particularly with young children running around, the incidences of burns from the flames is removed, and these stoves also have a chimney, and thus respiratory problems such as asthma are dramatically reduced. And they are also, from a fuel efficiency perspective, much more fuel efficient. And so from an environmental perspective, they're a win as well. And these can be completed in just 2 or 3 days, right from start to finish. But again, the model's the same in terms of using, our clients will fund the cost of the materials, and still there'll be local experts who are the ones overseeing it and sort of essentially project managing it in conjunction with our clients.
I know on your website, you also promote like sustainable and eco luxury accommodations. So why is this commitment to minimizing like environmental impact in your travels? Why is that important to you? And kind of how does that also work with what you guys do?
Yeah, well, from the beginning, it's been for me important to take a holistic approach to a trip, and so not just focus on the service, the give back component, but also to think about how can the trip itself be beneficial to the destination. And so one way of doing that is the accommodation. Obviously, that's an important part of any vacation. And it's a wonderful, exciting area that there are still, very high-end luxury properties that do take sustainability really seriously, from their design to their construction to their everyday practices. And those are the sort of properties that we lead with in terms of our recommendations to our clients. And then there's things like the restaurants that we propose are ones that, where available, will source their food locally and use organic ingredients. And like you touched on as well, providing those opportunities to engage with local farmers and local artisans and winemakers as well, to provide that local touch. And on that subject of local touch as well, part of our philosophy is to hire local guides only, which is obviously great for providing employment locally, but also from a client's perspective, it's really wonderful to get that insider knowledge that only a local can bring. And then I think probably that the last aspect to that holistic philosophy is around the forms of transportation. And where available, we use like electric vehicles where they're available, or other eco-friendly forms of transport.
You mentioned guides. If a family or a client is on one of these vacations, do they have a guide like throughout the process, or is some of it on their own, or they do? Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. Essentially they do, yes, but then there are times that the family says, we're just happy to have some chill days and do our own thing, and that's great as well. In those situations, the guides are always contactable, but they may not be, right on the scene if that's what the client asks for.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced in kind of organizing and then executing these volunteer vacations? I can imagine with so many moving parts, you've probably run into a few challenges here and there.
Definitely fewer and fewer. And in terms of, these days now, having been running these trips for nearly 20 years, the logistical side of things is pretty smooth. And I touched on it earlier when I was talking about the biggest challenge is around getting that when the volunteer project is of the more significant size, such as a house or the bathroom that I mentioned, getting that timing right so that there's just enough work left that the clients can come and still make a meaningful contribution, and time it so that we get it to completion in the time that they have available. That's, as I say, less and less an issue because we're nailing it these days.
You've perfected it.
Yeah, pretty much.
So for families that might be considering a volunteer vacation like this, what advice would you offer them to kind of help them prepare and make the most of their experience?
I would encourage families to think about things like, think of it firstly as their vacation. From our perspective, these trips are first and foremost a vacation, and it's not boot camp. It's really a way, a little bit like, this isn't what we expect to happen, but for instance, the woman I mentioned who went to Kenya, it's sort of we make everything easy for you and to dip your toes in the water of the volunteering and see if it's for you. And if it is, then, the other great thing is we have a lot of repeat clients who love what we do. Yeah, it's a way of, as I say, dip your toes in the water, see if it's for you, and either maybe book with us again or go the really more adventurous thing and immerse yourself in that destination for a long period of time. But as I say, that's actually really rare. And so I would, advise families to think about, where do we want to go on vacation, and then where and how would we like to help. And a really important aspect of that is, being aware of the ages and abilities of all family members, but particularly the children.
Yeah.
And so we figure this out in the conversations with our clients. But as a rough and ready rule of thumb, we say that from about the age of 5, our wildlife and environmental projects, our children from that age can get involved in. And so that can be, I've mentioned the wildlife one in Costa Rica, but so another example would be helping with elephant conservation in Thailand or India or Sri Lanka. In those destinations, children from as young as 5 can be involved with preparing the meals for the elephants and then really an amazing education experience for them to walk alongside the elephants and then observe them socializing with each other, and then also bathing with each other, and seeing what elephants, how they behave in their natural environment, and then also learning about the reasons why things like elephant riding is actually it's not a good thing, and should be banned, and it's really heartening to see that more and more places are following the right practices. So learning that actually elephants have to go through torture in order to be made rideable, and so that form of elephant tourism is actually really bad. So that's an important part of that aspect. I'm sort of getting off track there a bit myself, getting on my own pedestal there, but. Yeah, so understanding what the ages of the kids are and the appropriateness of projects. So we say that from the age of 5, the environmental and wildlife ones can be good. And then once kids enter their teens, still, if they love animals, then continue with those wildlife projects. But we also love to encourage them to be involved in those building projects in particular, because that's where the magic happens in terms of that interaction and engagement and cross-cultural exchange that can really bring profound transformation in all family members. And it can be a great family bonding experience to help, for instance, to help build a house together.
So when you sit down with the family, do you kind of talk about those things? You go through like the ages, and you can kind of guide them in a direction that's going to be most beneficial to the ages of their family. Is that kind of?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Kimmy. So the typical way, but there's no one way, but the typical way that a client will get in touch with us will be from visiting our website, liking what they see, and then completing a Plan My Trip form, which is fairly comprehensive in terms of gathering that information about the ages of the children, the destinations that are of interest, the time of year, what that they like to do on vacation. And then I handle all of those inquiries personally. And so I'll take a look at them, and then either the clients will want to have a phone call or just exchange by email, whatever they prefer. We'll go through it and work out what is the best fit for them, and then prepare a suggested itinerary on the basis, or more than one quite often, and then send that through, and then tweak them, and then once we've finalized it, get it priced for them, and if they like that, then get it booked.
How much lead time do you usually have for vacation? Like, so as far as like when they start to when they would actually go on vacation, how much time do you like clients to have?
From our perspective, we're kind of neutral on it, really. It doesn't really matter to us how far in advance a client books. But there are certainly some projects where more lead time is required, and then also some destinations where more lead time is required in terms of securing, the good accommodation, particularly in that sort of eco-luxury accommodation. So that, for instance, we've spoken about Costa Rica. If you want to travel to Costa Rica over the holiday season, sort of December, January time, you really do need to book that a long way in advance. At least 6 months, but often more than that. And then we do have some clients, however, that have it happens that things come up and they say, oh well, I've got a gap, and in 2 weeks' time, and it can be a bit of a scramble, but we've certainly done it to put together a trip for clients that have smaller timeframes. I would say the typical would be, put it this way, sort of busy times tend to be sort of around sort of nowish booking for Christmas, Christmas, New Year's, and then in January, February, booking for June, July time. So yeah, sort of 4 to 5 months. So is the typical lead time.
Yeah. Do you help guide clients through, like, I know some of those places would need like visas and vaccinations and that kind of thing. So that's all part of kind of help them with that part too.
Yep, it is. Again, on that Plan My Trip form, we just ask them if they would like help with visas and vaccinations. And if they say yes, then we'll get the information that they need. Yeah.
So looking ahead, like what is your vision for the future of Hands Up Holidays? Where do you see it going? And how do you see like the whole concept of this kind of philanthropic travel, volunteer travel sort of, I don't know if you call it an industry, but a part of the travel industry, like growing, evolving?
Well, in the context of Hands Up Holidays, we just sort of keep rolling out new destinations as we get to visit them and do the reconnaissance and assess their suitability. So we're just about to unveil Roatan in Honduras as our latest destination. And we're also looking to add Puerto Rico, Zimbabwe, and China to new destinations. They're in the pipeline. And in terms of the evolution of philanthropic travel, we've actually recently released a new brand, a distinct brand from Hands Up Holidays, which is called Impact Destinations. And the idea behind that is, in contrast to Hands Up Holidays, which has as we've been talking about, the hands-on, actually physically helping component to it. The idea behind Impact Destinations is that it's a traveler's philanthropic donation, which will enable the experts in that destination to do what they do best and then unlock a unique experience for the client, which can sound a bit weird or esoteric or something. So I'll give you a couple of examples of that. One is on a safari day in South Africa. Guests can get to fund and witness a rhino relocation from a reserve that's facing a lot of rhino loss due to poaching, and a relocation to a better protected reserve in Botswana. So this is where the guests actually go into the helicopter with the veterinarian while he's preparing to dart the rhino. And once he has darted the rhino, land the helicopter and spend time with a sedated rhino, and then see it loaded into the container and airlifted off, as I say, to Botswana. So it's really, it's about being able to say, I saved the life of a rhino whilst on safari.
Wow.
And then it's pretty special. And then another example on the sort of humanitarian side is in Australia, where guests can fund a scholarship for a promising and almost always female Aboriginal art student. And in return for funding that scholarship, they then get to have a experience with an established Aboriginal artist with whom they can commission their own unique work of art.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. So it's like the next level of kind of this sort of philanthropic travel.
Yeah.
It's like, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's really excited about it.
Yeah. So have you started that yet, or is that?
Yep, it is live.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's a different website, impactdestinations.com.
Okay. So I was going to ask you, that leads in perfectly, where, like, if our audience is interested in learning more about Hands Up Holidays, where can they find you? Where are you on the socials?
Yeah. Well, on the socials, we have Instagram and Facebook are our main platforms. And so you can find us on Instagram at Hands Up Holidays and at Impact Destinations, and same on Facebook. And then the website, I mentioned one, impactdestinations.com. The other is handsupholidays.com.
And I'll have links for all of that in our show notes for this episode too. So, well, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to share that maybe I haven't asked about, or anything that, is just particularly important to you about what you guys do?
I guess just to say, I just touched on it, that the idea of the girlfriend getaways, we've done a few of them and want to plant that seed again, because I think it's a really meaningful way for women to get together and go a bit deeper.
Yes, and that's something that would really tie into kind of what we do. That's kind of our focus, especially our goal at Travel Bug Girls is kind of to be creating communities of women that want to
Right.
travel together, that maybe don't know each
Right.
other right now, but bringing
Yeah,
them
true.
together.
Mhm.
So that aspect definitely would perfectly fit in with kind of what we do, and as well as giving back, which is, I feel like, is important to us too. So thank you so much for making the time to talk to me. This has been really interesting. I looked all over your website and clicked all the things, and I mean, these experiences just look fantastic, and I'm just in favor of things that help us to learn more about our world and people that we are different from us, so that we can realize we're not that different after all. I think just traveling in general helps us to have just a larger perspective of the world and like how we fit in it. And I really appreciate what you guys are doing to also add that giving back feature, because I think that's important too and helps us kind of get out of, it's easy to get wrapped up in ourselves. And I think anytime we can sort of open that door up to other people and then see how we can help people in need, it's just always a good thing for us and them. So thank you so much again, Christopher, for joining me. I appreciate you being on today. Thank you.
Oh, it's been an honor. Thank you, Kimmy.
Stay tuned to TravelBugGirls.com for more information on an exclusive Travel Bug Girls trip with Hands Up Holidays, or book your own custom luxury family volunteer vacation at handsupholidays.com and tell them the Travel Bug Girls sent you. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Travel Bug Girls podcast. Be sure to subscribe to get our new episodes every week. We'd love to connect with you on social media. Share your answer to this week's podcast question with us at facebook.com/travelbuggirls. You can find us on your favorite social media by using @travelbuggirls. Want to join our VIP group? You'll find us on Facebook groups under TBG Travel Bugs. Learn more about the Travel Bug Girls and what we do on our website at travelbuggirls.com. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and safe travels. This spring break, choose your own Disney adventure with our very own Travel Bug Girls Disney expert. Whether it's a 3-night cruise to the Bahamas aboard the Disney Wish, a 3-day Disney park experience including resort accommodations and Disney dining, or both, Cassie specializes in crafting custom vacations full of joy, ease, and just the right amount of Mickey-shaped snacks. She takes the stress out of planning, adds a dash of enchantment, and turns every trip into a storybook adventure. Visit TravelBugGirls.com or click the link in our show notes to find out how Travel Bug Girls can make your Disney dreams come true.